Like a leaf floating downstream, it was rivers of kindness that brought me to this congregation and to Unitarian Universalism. 13 years ago, I went into the church of the First Unitarian Church of Omaha with my spouse at my mother's behest, and I met Dave Nicklin. Now, Dave Nicklin was quite advanced in years and a retired professor from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. And it was his self-imposed job to count every single person that was in that congregation. And Dave was no slouch. He didn't just do tally marks and say, okay, there's about 150 people there. He knew everyone by name. He knew people so well that he knew everyone's back of their head by name. Because he would spend the entire service in the back writing down each and every person's name on a piece of paper to turn it into the office. And if he didn't know your name, well, that wasn't the state of affairs for very long, because he would quickly come up and introduce himself to you and ask what it is that you needed from the First Unitarian Church of Omaha. Dave was exceptionally kind. He was also the first person to write me a recommendation letter to get into seminary. I found this letter when I was unpacking and realized that even though as Dave knew me and wrote my name in that long list of names of people who went to First Unitarian Church of Omaha, I knew him well and that he had passed away before I was able to finish seminary. So even though he wrote that recommendation letter, he never got to see me become ordained or to practice my ministry. And so Dave's kindness has to live on in my ministry. And it's Dave's kindness that I see in each and every one of you. That I saw when I came here for Reverend Florence's ordination and watched you all pour waters of blessing over Florence's hands during her ordination service, that I knew that this congregation was exceptionally kind. And you certainly have gone above and beyond my expectations. I was planning to write down everything that everybody had ever done for me since me and my family moved 4 weeks ago, and I quickly realized it was impossible. Every day, 2 to 3 people doing 2 to 3 kind things made it so that there was no way I'd be able to name all of you in this sermon for my first sermon as I intended. We'd be here for a long time. So I will do you a kindness by not doing that. But thank you so much for all the kindness from everything. Even just yesterday, Anna Sophia brought me chocolate chip peanut butter cookies as a blessing for the first service here. And I have to ask you for one more kindness. You see, I was born in a trailer park, very low class, grew up in the military where literacy wasn't exactly high on the agenda of family activities. So I will often read things before I hear them pronounced out loud. I mispronounce them and use grammar incorrectly, so if you could just do me a kindness by coming up to me and saying, you know, I think it's actually pronounced this way, or if you want to get into a long discussion about the proper use of y'all and all y'alls, I'm quite ready to have that kind and loving discussion. I was going to go through a list of all the things that I needed your kindnesses in, and I read it to my spouse as he was listening to my sermon, as he kindly does, and he said, don't worry, they will find out about all your faults later. So I appreciate those kind words, Tom. Because I know that you will be kind about any of it anyway. The phrase, no act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted, comes from that Aesop's fable tale. And while the sentiment is nice, I don't exactly agree with how that tale goes as a representation of kindness. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I often do not feel like a lion ready to grant great acts of mercy that may come back to me someday. And I often really don't like feeling like the mouse that needs that mercy in order to live. No, that's why I prefer the story of Androcles, where a man and a lion, depending on the context, have a little bit more of the same power to be able to share that kindness. And as I was talking with the youth here, and as I was thinking myself, if I was a runaway slave, and I came upon a cave, and the first thing that happened to me was a lion came to that cave, an injured lion no less, I'm not sticking around. I'm not going to check out its paw to see what's going on and why it's injured. I'm getting out of there. I got to get free. But Androcles stays. He gets the thorn out of the paw of that lion, and he stays with him and says he lived with him for 3 years. Imagine the kindness of the lion not to eat the guy. But that is the kindness that they have, an equal relationship for so long, and they persist in it that even when he is recaptured and tossed into the lion pit, the lion remembers and protects him. And it is this kindness between equals, that sets them both free. Now, being kind all of the time as an attitude or as a character trait is not exactly easy. And for a lot of us, it isn't exactly something we were born with, although I'd contend Dave Nicklin was probably born that way. Deidre Sullivan summed up her father's philosophy of kindness as always go to the funeral for an episode of All Things Considered. She said, always go to the funeral means that I have to do the right thing when I really, really don't feel like it. I have to remind myself of it when I could make some small gesture, but I really don't have to and I really don't want to. I'm talking about those things that represent only inconvenience to me, but the world to the other guy. You know, the painfully underattended birthday party, the hospital visit during happy hour, the Shiva call for one of my ex's uncles. In my humdrum life, the daily battle hasn't been good versus evil. It's hardly so epic. Most days, my real battle is doing good versus doing nothing. And this doing good I have seen in Unitarian Universalism all the time. When I think about who we are in the religious landscape, I think about how we are embracing transgendered peoples. So when they come to us and they say, this is who I am, this is my name, these are the pronouns that I want to use now, we figure it out, we learn it, and we embrace them with a loving kindness. That didn't come out of nowhere. I mean, Unitarian Universalists have been marrying same-sex people since the 1950s, whether the state chose to recognize it or not. I remember when I was an intern at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Topeka, and congregation members talked to me about what it was like during the time of the AIDS crisis, when that disease first came and nobody knew anything about it except only gay people had it. And where were these people to go to church? It was the Unitarian Universalists who responded to that with a welcoming congregation to get their churches more oriented to accepting queer people, to make a home for them and their worship, for our worship, when there was no other place. It's the same kind of radical kindness that I'm seeing with so many Unitarian Universalist churches and congregations putting up the sign, Black Lives Matter. 3 words. Now, putting up a banner is no great act of mercy, but it means the world to people who are being disproportionately killed by the police and feel like their lives don't matter. And Unitarian Universalists are putting this up despite death threats, despite the banners being cut down, despite bricks being thrown through their windows. And this, too, didn't come out of nowhere. I mean, during the Civil Rights Movement, when Martin Luther King Jr. called for leaders of faith to come join him in Selma, Unitarian Universalists were one of the few to respond and walk across that bridge, which comes from our history of being abolitionists for getting rid of the institution of slavery. And it's no great acts of mercy, but small kindnesses that happen. It's the same way with our worship services here today while they're accessible. If you have difficulty seeing or difficulty hearing or mobility issues, you are still welcome here because we know this is your religious home. And that is why we welcome everyone, not because we pity people, say you're going through a hard time, you're going to need this, because it is an equal exchange of kindness. Now, doing all these kindnesses, it can be hard to forget to do the chief kindness, which is the kindness to yourself. Nair Wayid, a US-based poet, wrote, "Be softer with you. You are a breathing thing, a memory to someone, a home to a life." You know, one of the great gifts about being a minister is that I get to see everyone the way she writes this poetry. I see you all as homes to a life, a memory to someone, a living, breathing thing that deserves softness and kindness. So I hope when you go home and you look in your mirrors or you think about some stupid thing you did, that you can feel about yourself, that you can look at yourself with the same loving kindness that I feel about you. because you deserve it. It can be hard to be kind all the time to each other, and it can be hard to be kind to ourselves. But even harder still, I feel it is to receive kindness. Especially with society's narrative today that we are supposed to be ultra-individualists, doing it all by ourselves again and again and again, until maybe we're at that moment where we are the mouse trapped in the lion's paws, needing that great act of mercy in order to survive. And it shouldn't be this way. It should be that we receive kindness every day out of recognition that that is a kindness to somebody else who's offering it. So if you're having a surgery, let people fuss over you. Let them bring the casseroles, let them visit you, let people help you across with your groceries, invite people to your house to fix that thing you don't understand. That you know that maybe they could help you, but you felt, oh, maybe I shouldn't do it, maybe I should figure it out myself. Because it is these bonds of loving kindness that bring us together as a community that I feel the rest of society would have us be separated. That same poet, Nair Waid, writes, "We return to each other in waves. This is how water loves." Our religion has us exude kindness towards others, and we can soften our souls towards ourselves. And we take care to realize how accepting kindness is a kindness in and of itself to all of those who freely give it. Like the lion and the slave, we are sitting here in the cave being kind to each other in a way that will one day set us all free. And accepting all these kindnesses like a confluence of kindness that washes over us the jagged rocks and smooths our edges, polishing us, all the parts may brilliantly shine to the surface. May we always be kind, and in turn, may we always know that we can ask and receive kindness here. Dearly beloved community, let us make it so.